Change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
I take a very compassionate approach with diet and with exercise and running. It's all about negotiation. And it's all about listening to the parts of my brain. Again, the brain is not one thing, and there's not one singular voice or desire or drive. There are many all happening at once. So I take the part of my brain that is conscious and that is distinct from my emotions, because there are parts of my conscious brain that are deeply engaged with my emotions, but there are parts of my conscious brain that are not. So I check in with the parts that are not engaged with the emotions, and I have trained them to be very gentle and compassionate and to listen to all the voices. Okay, my brain is trying to get me to do something to deal with a particular problem. So let's find out what the problem is. Let's find out what the challenge is. Let's listen to it. If a child is screaming and crying, we don't tell the child to shut up. If we're a good parent, we say, what's wrong? And if the child doesn't have language yet, we try to look for cues in their physical behavior or in their environment to try to figure out what the problem is. And since our primitive brain does not have language, we have to really touch in or get in tune with the feelings and the emotions and the images that are coming up. Because language is not what that part of the brain or those parts of the brain are versed in. They use neurochemicals that create certain feelings and certain desires and certain behaviors, and they'll create imagery as well. So let's find out what the baby in our head wants, and then let's talk to it. And maybe we have a conversation with it very gently about the cookie or about the exercise. For instance, if I don't want to go running, the statement, I don't want to go running, is really not true, because it's only certain parts of my brain that don't want to go running. And it's not that they don't want to go running, they simply don't want to get out of bed, or they don't want to get dressed, or they don't want to stand up. It's more about what they would like to remain doing rather than what they don't want to do. So our emotional brain is really controlled to a great deal by inertia. It doesn't like rapid changes. It doesn't like to go from a feeling of comfort to a feeling of discomfort. So practicing that gentleness is really all about checking in. What are you feeling? What's going on? Why are you screaming? Why are you crying? Okay, it's this thing in your environment. Well, let's take a look at that. Okay, it's this sensation in your body. Let's take a look at that. All right, it's a thought that you just had. Something triggered you, and now you're thinking about something that's really challenging, whether it be work or a loved one that died or a pet that is having an issue, whatever the thought might be. Let's take a look at that. And we're not going to force you to do something. We're not going to create a rule that says you have to do this and just harden the F up and squish those feelings down and toughen up and get out there and exercise, or eat the broccoli instead of the cookie. What we want to do instead is just really be gentle with those feelings and with those images and with those thoughts. Let them know that we heard them, or saw them, or felt them. Acknowledge that, and then take the child, put it on our shoulder, and walk towards the thing that we know is probably going to be the better choice, while we tell the child that it's okay. So when I go running, for instance, today, it dropped down into the teens in temperature, and we've got 4 inches of snow on the ground. So here we've had this incredibly warm winter, and now suddenly it's winter again, even though it's April. And my brain was like, I don't want to run in this. I'm done with winter. I don't want to go outside in that. So great, let's get in touch with that part of me. Let's nurture it. Let's listen to it. Let's really validate what it's feeling as we're getting dressed. And then let's walk out the door and still validate those feelings as we stand outside in the cold and feel it hit our cheeks and our nose and our mouths. And we take it on our shoulder and we walk it to the street, and we hit our watch and we start running, and we say, don't worry, it's okay, I've got you. You're okay, you're fine. I'm right here. So there's never a forcing, there's never a pushing, there's a carrying. And there's a gentleness in that carrying. And then during the run, if I decide that I want to run faster, I do the same thing. It's like, don't worry, I'm going to pick up the pace, but I've got it. If it's too much, I will slow down, okay? It's okay. If you get too scared and this workout feels too intense, it's okay, I'll slow down. And then I check in. It's like, okay, how are we doing? I picked up the pace. It's a little more intense. Are you okay? Can you feel it? Can you handle this right now? Let's try another 20 feet. How was that? All right, you still okay? Let's try another 20 more. So with diet, with exercise, or with anything that you're trying to do, it's really about listening and nurturing and being present and being mindful and allowing those voices to be there. Not just accepting them, that they're a part of you, and then ignoring them, but inviting them to the table. It would be like keeping your kids in their bedroom and never allowing them to dinner. So this is why I'm not a fan of diets that create rules and that have these strict lines in the sand. Because it's essentially like, okay, you kids have to stay in your room. Only the adults get to go eat dinner. The rest of you can't come. Or it'd be like going on a vacation and leaving the kids at home because the kids are just going to slow us down. We're not going to be able to enjoy our vacation, so they're staying home. I want to have this vacation at my intensity or at my speed, my pace. But with our brains, we can't do that. So we have to say, all right, I have to engage in eating, taking the most challenged part of my brain into consideration, accepting it, allowing it to be there, and nurturing it through this process of eating at the speed that it is comfortable going at. And with the amount of stress or discomfort that it is comfortable dealing with. We can't tell it to suck it up. We can't tell it to grow up. Those parts of our brain never grow up. They're always children. They're always primitive. That doesn't change. We have to change the way that we approach them. And we need to allow them to be there in the room with us. And listen to them and say, okay, sweetie, I know you want the cookie. Yep, I got it. What is it about the cookie? Oh, you like the smell? Okay. Is it the chocolate that you smell or is it the oatmeal that you smell? Right? And what about that? Does that remind you of something? So we start a conversation. We get present. We get mindful. And in that process, we feel heard. Those parts of our brain feel heard. And when they feel heard, they calm down. Because emotions are nothing more than signals. That's it. That's all they are. It's not us. It's a signal that our brain is creating, the primitive parts of the brain are creating to try to change our behavior. And if we ignore the signal, it's going to keep coming back. It's going to keep screaming at us. If you ignore the screaming child, it's not going to stop screaming. Or if it does stop screaming, it's not a good thing. That just means that it's now tucked into itself and said, screw you. You're not going to listen to me? Well, screw you. I'm going to do something that really messes up your day. Just you wait and see. So when we hear the emotions, when we hear those fears, that part of the brain says, okay, the conscious part got the message. My job is done. Emotion is a call to action. If you heed the call, it turns itself off after a little while because it did its job. It reached you. What I suggest, rather than removing things and rather going on a diet and having these rules that really work against the brain, I'm a much bigger fan of mindful eating rather than mindless eating. So mindful eating is where someone offers you a cookie and you say, okay, this cookie is problematic. I know that.